everybody, and welcome to Hex Token channel. Your host Superman in the house. Man, we got a cool video for you today. One of the biggest people in the space, Pulsechain liquid loans, how to pulse, you get it, and looking forward to this with Walrus, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. So hope you guys are excited. It's going to be pretty cool. A big welcome from me, Hex Token channel, your host Superman in the house, and of course, what do we talk about every day? Pulsechain, Hex, and of course all the cool projects that are coming over to Pulsechain. It's going to be a lot of fun, so a big welcome to you as well. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and hit the bell, and I hope you guys have a good time. But let's not muck around. We're going to check out somebody in the back green room here, so let's bring on Walrus. Hey, welcome, Walrus. Good to see you. Woohoo!
Hey, how are you, sir? Appreciate the invitation. How is everyone?
Very, very good. And we've got lots of people in the chat already, and it's starting to hum in there, so it's good to see everybody. We've got Brizology in the house there. Hey, good to see you, Briz. Property Review. Love this channel. Best channel ever, says Brizology. Love that as well. Rango in the house. Good to see Rango. Check my pulse as well. What's up, Superman? Let's go. Yep, we've got a nice Hex bounce, don't we, Walrus?
Little green candles makes everything better.
That's definitely awesome. We've got Brian, one of our community leads in the Discord. Great to see you, Brian. Super channel says Wookie. Hey, good to see you, Wookie, as well. Lies beneath in the house. How are you today? I've got the ultimate strategy, of course. Hex, EHEX, PLS, and PLX for the win, 100%. And of course, liquid loans as well. We're going to be talking about that in detail. So it's going to be pretty cool. Ready, steady to go, says Wookie. Good to see you in the house there. Sandy Beach. Hey, pleasure, Sandy Beach. One of our awesome moderators and community members. Pretty exciting. And Pulsechain says Walrus is always a legend. Woohoo! Lots of love out there for that one. All right,
appreciate
so nice.
Appreciate it.
Get in there, folks. More waiting than likes, says Brian. Yeah, definitely smash the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. We've got Hex Hodl in the house there. Hey, good to see Hex Hodl. We've got Dave down under. It's getting exciting. I can feel it, says Dave. It is indeed. We've got Hex in as well. G'day. We've got Sarah G. Hey, Sarah, it's been a while. Good to see you, Sarah, as well. And Crypto Artie is in the house there. Good to see Crypto Artie. We've got quite a few people just jumping in there. Nice. Now, get your questions in around liquid loans and Pulsechain, things like that you want to ask Walrus. We'll be looking at that a little bit later in the live stream, so definitely get into those questions in the house there in the chat. We've got Scott as well. What's up, Walrus? LL is going to be lit. Yeah, that's definitely going to be on fire, that's for sure. We've got Chaz Town in the house. Good to see you. Uncle Will as well. PLS Thailand's in the house. Good to see you as well. Andrew Reynolds, great stuff. And then Carl's in there as well. So, yeah, get your questions in if you've got stuff around liquid loans and Pulsechain. But, hey, let's get on to Walrus. Welcome.
Hey, appreciate it, man. This chat is popping. Thanks so much, guys. Glad to see so many people are here and excited, feeling good.
So you've just got a huge role at Liquid Loans, the biggest sacrifice project, and, of course, one of the top DeFis expected on Pulsechain. Let us know a bit about that, Walrus.
For sure. So, we got just a minute to talk backstage. It's a new role for me, but I kind of see it as I've always been in service of the community. So this is a new platform for me to keep doing what I'm doing. I've always sort of just kind of looked for where I thought the community needed me the most. So, when we were all telling Telegram, I was an admin. I tried to speak up there. When it came to the sacrifices and a lot of kind of those finer points, I spent most of my time in the VC inside of the Telegram room. As we expanded, I started doing a couple more streams, and I opened up a Twitter account, did Twitter Spaces, and tried to reach out to a lot of those community members there. And as we've grown, I've tried to participate in more of these different projects, ones that I think have a lot of value, a lot of utility. And, that's one of those things too, just quickly. A lot of times, when I talk about projects, sometimes I legitimately don't own or don't even know their tokenomics. I think the protocol is useful, right? There's a lot of those cool things. So I wanted to be able to educate about other useful tools that were going to exist on Pulsechain, that would exist with Hex and things like that. So I started to expand, although it was all about Pulsechain. Now we're at a spot where we're so educated. There's so many good content creators like yourself. The groups have expanded, and there's a little more siloing. It's one of those things, like, they didn't really need me to come on and do a lot of the things that I was doing. They don't need me to run another, streaming channel. We have a great community when it comes to content. So this is where I thought I could do a lot of good for the community. So LL being large, being a very vanilla DeFi in a lot of ways, this gives me a new platform to reach out and do cool things, you know, connecting with Legacy, bringing in DeFi from other places. So it's one of those things. Me being at LL was as much about the community needing me to be at LL and reach out to new community members, and sort of a tip of the hat to what so many other people are doing in the community, that they didn't need me. They don't need me to speak in the Telegram. We got so many people doing a great job. They don't need me to create a YouTube channel. We got so many people doing a great job. They don't need me to, obviously I'm always going to try to put in my 2 cents on Twitter because it has a lot of scale. A lot of people can see it. They don't need me to run Twitter Spaces, everyone's doing such a good job. That's why we created How to Pulse, all those things. This is the spot where I can come in and put in some work for everybody.
Hey, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that they chose the perfect person at the perfect time for this role. And I'm very excited to see where you're going to head. So your title is Global Head of Growth and Partnerships for Liquid Loans. And that's amazing. I think obviously with over $50 million sacrificed for Liquid Loans, it is a huge, huge project on Pulsechain with the potential to really be a game changer, to really amplify how good Pulsechain will be at the end of the day. As in this role, what's some of the sort of things that maybe CC and the CEO has talked to you about achieving or doing in this role?
Sure. So one of the biggest things, just in like one sentence, that made a big difference to me about CC and Dave was they didn't see it as, look at our success, we raised a bunch of money. They see it as a huge responsibility, because now there's stewardships for a big war chest that has to have a lot. Like, that thing needs to have a lot of impact. Like, they see that as responsibility. That stuff's not sitting around. It's not coming to me directly or any of those things, right? Like, this is ammo and ammunition for the ecosystem. So one of the things that they were looking for is we're trying to always look for, where are we missing things? So a lot of it will be about scaling, reaching out to different legacy, other DeFi protocols. So that will be primarily the focus. I made this joke a few times with when I was at How to Pulse and on stream. Bro, high fives don't pump the price. We're already here, right? So again, if I don't need to educate the community and do some of these things, then what we really need is new people, right? If the community is doing such a good job, then all I need to do is get them to the community, right? So we're so polished up, we've got sharp teeth. I know that we'll have a retention rate. I would say sticky, right? It'll be very sticky. Anyone that comes in and sees the community and sees the number of girls we have doing cool stuff, they come and see the number of streamers, the number of math guys, the amount of devs outspoken, the funny stuff going, whatever it is. Like, we have so much here. All I need to do is get them to come see these things, right? So I'll primarily be going after, again, new spaces, new eyes, a lot of the suits, things like that. So that'll be the big focus, right? Like, that's how they saw these things. It's like, we need to grow the chain. And that was kind of my view when it comes to Hex as well, right? If Hex is a store of value on the chain, the more value on the chain means more value to be stored in the store of value on the chain, right? So that'll be the biggest thing. They brought in Teller, which offers great Oracle services and is DeFi and has a really cool team that has a lot of similar values to what we and the rest of the Pulsechain community does. And I've done similar things already. There's a handful of projects like the M87 guys. They have a really, really large project with cool stuff, but they're supportive of Hex, and they have some mixing services. They're actually designing one for Hex. So those guys are doing cool stuff. I went to go spend some time with them, and I stay up to date. There's a lot of these projects that are supportive, that keep building things. And I always wanted to make sure that they felt like they could be heard, like they have an avenue for communication. So, I mean, I'm going to be doing what I've been doing. I'm just looking for the next market where I can be most impactful and sort of leverage the value, name, and professionalism that LL has.
Okay, great. So I guess that they've kind of given you quite a broad brush, as it were, in terms of the growth.
They told me to go figure it out.
Yeah. So in terms of the growth, you guys have already got your social media team. You got Matt doing the YouTube. We're doing a great job on there. You've got, I think that's close to 8,000 subs on that channel. You've got Hexicat now has just started last couple of months doing podcasts. Yeah, and he's wonderful on that from what I can see. And you've got a couple other people. So from your growth perspective, is one element for you is just channeling in people into those social medias as well? Am I reading that right?
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to be looking at some of the ways to expand. So in general, kind of a rule of thumb, when it comes to some of these things is, and you can see this from a lot of the other channels, that whenever, like right now we're in kind of a transition phase, there's not that much like hard hitting stuff to go as we're waiting for like a next round of details. And there's, all this like FUD and fire in the world. So whenever that's kind of the case, we want to be able to broaden out a little bit, right? And one of the other unique things about LL specifically that one gives us a neat thing for outlook and also a great way to bring in new eyes to Pulsechain is in general, what some of the things like when you're trying to like find value, one is you can fix a problem that people have and you can do it better. Another one that's a little more difficult, but is usually more valuable, is to fix a problem people don't know they have. So that's something that we're doing currently when it comes to, using the collateralization and not having to sell, right? So in some ways, you actually, everyone close your ears for a second, take a deep breath. You actually really don't need Hex in most ways. What you need is exposure to the Hex price. You don't really need that much Pulse. What you want is a lot of exposure to the Pulse price, right? And obviously, again, that's in a very limited window. Of course, you want to hold a ton of these things, right? So in that capacity, that's where LL can offer a lot of value to the community. And it's also something that has a lot of wide ranging appeal and also brings in a lot of experts to talk on these things, right? So, so much of what we do in crypto, we use a different vocabulary, there's a different lingo and feel, and it's difficult to bring up to people who are no corners, right? But if you just go find somebody and say, hey, how does it sound to have a loan with zero interest that you don't even have to pay back? People get that. I do not have to explain that much, right? Like that's a pretty triggering sentiment. And the idea of, collateralization and taking advantages of being capital efficient. This is cool stuff that, we can teach at a simple level so that so many people on the system can use it, but it's also engaging for a lot of broad overarching topics. So if we can get into some of these financial topics that hit a lot of the legacy, then I can make people come in and listen to that message and then we bring them on chain, right? So those are some of those things that we'll be looking at doing is we want to make sure that we're utilizing what our best assets are as far as the chain as a whole. So, like a big one right now, some of the next couple of things that I have just in like very, very short term will be bringing up how LL and USDL and these things will interact with like the DAO and things on Pulsex, because we have a really, really good idea of how Pulsex is, right? So since that's one of the things that we're not waiting for new information on, we can really hammer that home as an education tool and as a platform to make sure that we have cool things that are going on here, right? So, that's one of those things that we'll make a bit of a pivot to, focusing on education, these things. And then obviously, again, is we have sort of less specifically hot topics to really talk about and engage with. That's when you want to broaden out these other topics and bring in new eyes. And then when you have really, really great narratives and things are really strong, then we'll bring people up. But the bear market is about sort of widening your base, not sort of, that top up capturing.
Okay, cool. That kind of leads me into my next question, which is market segments that you're focusing on. Obviously, we have a large retail book, and you already have some large players in that went through the sacrifice for liquid loans, like the Hex Gold Whale. Have you got different strategies in terms of the retail book versus, say, large investors or even institutions? Have you guys looking at that sort of segmentation?
Sure. So that sort of process is actually, I think, kind of funny. It's similar to my own growth, right? So I've not only gone where I've been needed, but I've sort of worked my way up as I felt comfortable taking on more responsibility, and as the community felt more comfortable giving me that responsibility. So, and I do not take that lightly, by the way, community. So as we broaden, every time we add a new sort of feather in the cap, we can also go after bigger birds, right? So, we're a very professional team. Pulsechain's getting larger. There's more cool things on Pulsechain. We have, we brought in Teller. There's no DeFi. Now there's a strong Oracle. We can now go after players that we couldn't have previously, right? So now that, the DApp's getting refined, there's a lot that can be built on top. We've seen there's recent things built on like Liquidity, which is what, Liquid Loans is a fork of. There's more things broadening there. There's other ways of sort of maximizing some of these DeFi use cases. and also in some other ways, some of these DeFi protocols that are not doing things as sound or taking more risky positions are getting wrecked, and then people are looking for better alternatives. So it does scale, and you sort of, as you grow, you can take on, you know, higher and higher clientele. So bringing in Taylor was a really big deal for us. Now we kind of have an oracle, and so we will keep evolving up and up and up as who we target and who we're able to target as we go. So, you know, having a very large, you know, again, inside of our ecosystem, we call it a sacrifice. I would be careful, obviously, for a lot of technical reasons, but I would refer to that more as, hey, we had a very, very successful seed round to some of those legacy guys, right? So the acumen and language that we would use for some of them to bring them into space is different now. The DApp there, you know, all these things, right? So as those built up, we can go after bigger players. So now having, again, the strong oracle and these things like that, we'll start to scale up and have a little different methodology and lingo for how we go after larger entities, more legacy finance.
Oh, great. I noticed that you'll be familiar with KG and Internet Money Wallet. They're looking to have 24/7 service for that wallet, which I thought was pretty cool. And that's kind of a sign of maturity and professionalism and decentralized crypto and crypto generally. Is that something that Liquid Loans is looking to do? And also, would you have maybe dedicated people towards larger clients? Is that something, those are sort of a two question there together?
I love that idea. So one, I love KG and those guys. KG's a personal friend. He doesn't live that far from me. I've got a chance to go hang out with him and his wife on a few occasions. So absolute tip of the hat to them. So that's another one of these ideas about kind of scaling in some of these ways, is that we have the Telegram room set up with a lot of VC and all these types of things, but also so we'll keep expanding where people can reach out to us, but it's also a little bit of segmenting, right? So like Telegram, if you guys have been on these things, like this is where the hitters are, right? You know, this is the people digging through Etherscan transactions. These are the ones plotting out crazy strategies. The ones that are, you know, very, you know, hobbyist boarding on professionals about the amount of time they dedicate to any of these cryptocurrency projects, right? So we'll talk to those guys differently, right? Like these are kind of like my people, right? Or people like yourself. This is what we do. We love it. We'll ask questions about stuff we'll never even interact with, simply because we want to know. So we'll, you know, the Telegram will grow, but you'll always see that it's tailored around, you know, super enthusiasts, bordering on professional types. We'll start to grow the Twitter spaces. That's where a lot more people will find engagement. They'll ask a little more broad questions, a lot of even questions about the team. So a lot of things I do on Twitter are, you know, more personal about myself sometimes. They'll even talk about me and my fiance and some of our journey and things like that, because that's kind of what that Twitter ecosystem is looking for. I like the model of being account-based. It's something that me and Healthy Pulse have talked about. I like working one-on-one. So as we get some scale, we'll start to sort of, you know, funnel people into those directions where they're going to feel more of that constant engagement, where they feel like they can be interacted with in the way they want to interact with us. That goes back to even like the privacy that was on the ticketing tool, right? If you're a large player, any of these reasons, right? I don't even like almost even giving rationale for professionalism, or for privacy, because you deserve that. You should not have to explain why you want to be private on your matters. So, you know, that ticketing tool was another one of those like commitments to making sure people can engage and communicate the right way. I will make sure that I sort of sort through and have ways of allowing larger players to come in and interact with myself, now that we sort of have, you know, a player in between, you know, CC and Dave and a lot of our media team. That'll be some of my role I take on. But I like that question, because I like to view things as sort of an account-based business. And I've always thought of myself as service. So I'll look at some of those ways. I haven't settled on it 100%. I think that on the website, I'm going to add my Liquid Loans email and some of those things. I want to make sure that I keep as much of the just, hey, come talk to me, come answer me, come ask me questions. You know, some of these people in the chat, a lot of people reached out and just been, Walrus, hey, here's what's going on. I want to maintain as much of that as possible, but I will definitely tailor some of those things around large accounts to make sure people feel like they can speak to somebody and get the type of service that you would expect for being a very large player in something.
Right. Fantastic. I mean, you guys already have, to some degree, that you have kind of ambassadors, don't you, that work the Telegram and places like that, right? That's kind of the titles. I think you got Hot Pool as one of those. Yeah. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, our admin group is really active, and they do a really great job too. So that's something, again, that was kind of my role initially, was an ambassador. I was someone who really appreciated the project, someone they sort of felt comfortable saying, hey, this guy here, he believes in what we're doing. And also they felt comfortable saying, hey, if you have questions about us, you can talk to Walrus about them. Right. So that was a sign of trust and respect between me and the team previously, before this role and growing up. So we do have some ambassadors that do a lot of great things, and I think that model will expand a little bit. We'll see it as we add some levels and grow. You want to be very, very tight in the beginning and make sure that you don't just lose sort of value alignment on a lot of these things. And that's something that when me, CC and Dave, we've had a lot of conversations about everything we have going on in the space well before there was any intention of me being a part of their team. And even then, it was a long process to get these things right. How to Pulse is someone in a group, in a team that I absolutely love. I have to always maintain, a level of connection with those guys and keep doing education and building these things right. I had to be able to again, maintain a lot of these things that are important to me, in the ecosystem. So it takes time to grow those things properly, right? You don't really want, we all want the hockey stick on price, but you don't really want that as far as growth in a team. It takes time to build those things out on a level and make sure that you don't grow too fast and have, you not have congruency in message or, so many of us, so many times, just get a bad taste in your mouth because, someone's having a bad day and it's snappy. And if you don't have that sort of social credit along the team in a lot of ways, it can be tough, right? So, I'm far from perfect, but because I have a big body of work and I spend a lot of time with people, if I have a bad day and I'm rude, most people get it and, give me a little bit of slack. And if you bring on people that don't have that yet, everyone's going to have a bad day. And maybe they don't have that same level of, respect or sort of understanding or appreciation or body of work to realize that it was a bad episode, not a bad show. Right. So we're going to keep growing on all those things. And those guys have been very, very methodical, and direct about making sure that growth is sustainable and clean. You want the hockey stick on price, but not on the team.
Yeah, sure. You talked about a key word I thought that not enough people talk about, which was stickiness. So that seems to be something I think that's a really good key part of if you're going to bring all these people, attract all the people, you've got to keep them there. And of course, the staking on the platform does help with that, but you need sort of that service and other things, which sounds like you're working on, as well as education and things like that. So it sounds pretty exciting to me. Now, we did have a question here from Wall to Wall. I was saving this one. Wall to Wall's probably, why is he not posting it? But I'm saving this one. And it is easy to look professional when you have raised $40 million with no expectations. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, one preceded the other. We didn't look unprofessional and then raise 40 million, right?
Yeah.
So, to one, absolutely, right? And so when much is given, much is expected, right, to some degree. So again, that came from somewhere, right? There was a reason people believed in that project, that team, the decisions, what they saw initially. And then, yes, absolutely. There's a high level, be particular here. There is a high standard set and understood from the team, and that will continue.
Yeah. Hey, look, just because you get a lot of money doesn't mean you can be professional. I've seen many companies with hundreds of millions of dollars capital raised, and they were completely unprofessional. And of course, many of them went down within the first 2 years. So yeah, it's not a given, that one, from my point of view. Now I've just got we're going to leave. Have you got any questions for liquid loans? Get them in the chat there. Later on, we're going to do Pulsechain. So get your liquid loans questions in. We'd love to hear from you about your questions. So get onto that one. Now I've got a little one here about the total value locked for liquidity. Currently at the moment, it's $440 million total value locked. We got a MakerDAO with the DAI stablecoin. Obviously, liquid loans going to have USDL. That's at 7.75 billion, which is a 17.6 times bigger than liquidity. Where do you think that liquid loans might end up amplifying to after Pulsechain, like in terms of over time? You have any ideas or any thoughts about that?
sure. So I like to be fair, but I also like to be pretty intellectually honest. And I just absolutely think that Liquidity and liquid loans is a better protocol than MakerDAO. I think that there's a bit of the Lindy effect that's been around for a long time. I don't think people really ever question the DAI token, which I think is a good thing because it's a relatively strong algorithmic coin, right? So
Yeah.
I really don't hate that standpoint. There are things about liquid loans that improve those things in a lot of ways, both for participants and sort of adjacent participants, people who are going to use the stable coin or will have the stable coin paired with whatever asset is they enjoy. So I think that we'll end up with a larger total value than Liquidity pretty quick. And Maker would sort of be one of our first benchmarks. They have a pretty good name and a very good relationship with a lot of the ETH community. Luckily, that's something that we come from sort of the Genesis beginning. So we've had a long time to help educate, help participate, earn that respect, earn our position in a lot of ways with the rest of the community. The other is in really trying to make sure that so something that I always like to defend is people who are RH maximalists or maxi in some capacity. That's not an unreasonable position. This stuff is really hard. And so if you find someone you feel is trustworthy and is building good stuff and you say, this is all I'm going to do, that's not a bad position. So I really don't have too much of a problem with that. Like everything, you're going to have extremists on certain sides. But if somebody didn't want to participate in some of the things that I do or LL or any of these things, and they're just going to wait on RH, I really don't mind that too much. I think that's a reasonable position, especially if you have limited bandwidth, right? You know, some of us have all the time in the world to sit here and learn and criticize. Or maybe we're at a point where we can do things that are negative EV overall because we want to and participate in them. We're willing to take on more risks. There's all types of reasons why some of us would be broader in our perspectives than others. I don't really have a problem with that. I do think that we offer a lot of utility that you don't really have to have on ETH because of the connection with stable coins and some of these things. So I think USDL by itself is a worthwhile use case for what we're doing. And a lot of times I like to take away certain names or certain language because there's so much energy already in those words. But just off the cuff, if I said you could have a stable coin that has centralization, that has jurisdictional risk, that has an admin key and can be censored, and then you're going to add bridge risk on top. Or you can have another one that has limited governance, no admin keys, no censorship, is DeFi, and is on your chain. That does not seem like a terribly hard question to me. Now, of course, USDC has a lot of use cases, and you want to use the right tool for the right job. But especially in some of these places, you'll see that the USDL risk profile is substantially better off for a lot of the community, even if you don't want to use it. And this is something that I like to champion. I like to speak about things that are pros, even if you don't like what we're doing, even if you don't like how things are designed, that there's outsized benefit, right? So you don't have to, actually open up a vault or a loan and use these things if you just don't feel comfortable with that side of things. More than understood. You can just use USDL in the stability pool. You can just take loan token. You can just say that, hey, this stuff is far out of my understanding. I do rather have a stable coin like USDL to have liquidity in these projects than have sort of the risk profile with USDC. So I think those are things that you don't necessarily have to share our worldview, our opinion, or love anything we're doing to still say that we're net beneficial for the ecosystem and provide a good tool set.
No, that's fantastic. Hey, look, I think even if people are not staking on the Liquid Loans DApp, they'll probably interact with it at some stage in some of the trading pairs. How prevalent do you think USDL is going to become on a Pulsechain when it does launch in terms of trading pools and things like that?
So it'll be something that I focus on here for a while. I think that is a very, very strong use case. And this is something, if you look back at some of the original things that I did on Liquid Loans channel before I participated directly and before I was, on payroll and those things, I was like, this is a stable coin factory. I like USDL. I like that risk profile. I like things that are trying to give us the same tools in DeFi that we have in legacy. So the USDL and its ability to be used in liquidity pairs and obfuscate from some of the Hart's law that we see for between different things, and to remove, again, a risk profile in a particular use case, those things are important to me.
Right. I think Liquidity launched what, 5-6 years after Ethereum. I think it's 5 years after Ethereum. You guys are launching pretty much what, 4 to 6 weeks after Pulsechain, maybe somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah, and so you're going to have that whole being at the beginning is going to mean, I think, that your TVL's got a much better chance of going up really fast and obviously getting adopted and used really quickly. Also, I think the fact that Pulsechain having a stable coin like USDL is going to be absolutely incredible. And I think with Liquidity, we've already seen when Terra Luna went down, Liquidity became one of the favored, smaller stable coins. And I think that at the beginning of Pulsechain, you'll be able to just rise with all that growth. And you guys are focused on growth in all your strategies at the moment, social media, your role, for example. I just think, it's going to be pretty exciting to see how big USDL gets. And I think it's actually fundamental for the Pulsechain, to be honest, having an incredible DeFi. And we've seen that with the recent forks with ETH Power, ETH Fair. And so, I'm really excited about it. The one thing where I wanted to lead with that was there will be other stable coins. We've seen Coasters looking at a fiat back one. We see BankX is out there still doing their multi-chain strategy with their stable coin. There is also another stable coin out there as well. So you're probably at least 4 native Pulsechain ones that seem to be there, excluding all the ones that could come over from other protocols. How do you feel about the competition in the space for the stablecoin market?
Please come compete. This is one of those things where I've always said, Pulsechain is that widest block at the bottom of the pyramid, right? Some of those things I think have great utility. Some of them I do not have a lot of trust in, but I do want everyone to come compete in a lot of ways, right? So one is, even if I necessarily don't agree with the way a particular coin or protocol is set up, as long as it's not an outright scam, I'm never so confident in my own opinion that I think I have the only way to figure these things out. So please come build something. I made a joke before. I don't want to be right. I want to be right. And what I mean is, I don't need to be right now in my opinion, but I do want to be right in the long run. So obviously we can quickly be educated on these things as worldviews can change, right? So please come compete, run your experiment next to ours, and we'll find the best use case for the whole ecosystem. The other is that stable coins sort of all get lumped in one bucket, but they do not all have the same risk profile, right? So using something algorithmic like USDL is especially beneficial in something like Pulsechain and liquidity pairs, where you don't actually need to, say, swap directly to fiat, right? So it would have more friction than something like USDL or BUSD or some of these things if you're trying to actually all the way, cash out, right? But if you're trying to stay on chain and we're trying to, obfuscate from price, and we're trying to provide liquidity in ways where we don't necessarily want to tie it to another project, all these things, then you look at the risk profile for USDL, and it has a lot of advantages. But of course, there's other use cases, right? There's other reasons to use a stable coin.
Sure.
So while I do think that like Coast, I haven't got a chance, and I actually genuinely intend to do more research on that thing. I think he's building something cool and worthwhile, and I hope his coin is successful, because I think that it will bring a lot of very beneficial things into the ecosystem and give us another on ramp. So
I agree with you.
I was going to say the last thing. I just think way too much of the space turns into my team, not your team. Like you don't really see this in other industries. You don't see, you don't see these stock guys like yelling at each other, right? You don't see Tesla stockholders making fun of Coke stockholders and any of these things. So I get that we'll always have our teams and our worldviews and our opinions, but we want to bring in value and bring in useful things. And this is something, again, I like to talk about the pros of things I'm involved in, even if you don't share my worldview. So even if you don't agree with some of the things that Liquid Loans is going to bring or do, I would at least think that you could look and say, hey, this isn't a scam, right? Maybe you don't think it's useful. Maybe you think we're dumb. That's fine. We can take that. But this is not a scam, right? Like this is a useful DeFi project we've seen on multiple chains that has a utility. Okay. Are a certain number of people going to either participate or participate with more funds because they now have this resource? Is there going to be certain people at some point who sell less because of what we're built and what we're putting together? So that to me is one of those things about some of these things is you don't even necessarily have to like me or what we're doing. We are going to benefit the chain. So even if you choose not to, and I understand all the reasons why a lot of the community would, cool. Know that we're still a positive and just be fair in your criticism.
Cool. Hey, let's just, are you able to give just a quick summary? I might bring up the DApp, and if you could just give a quick summary of what the Liquid Loans current offering is, that's probably a good idea for people that are new. We had someone ask, what is an algorithmic coin up there? So I thought we might get into that. So let's just pull that up. We're going to go to the Liquid Loans website here, and of course, let me get on the right chain. So that's the website for Liquid Loans, and you can find the link in the video description. And of course, the DApp is here at the moment. So you're talking about the stablecoin USDL, and could you just let us know just the basic how this page works?
Sure. So you can see here, this is how you would control your own trough or vault or loan. There's a few different terminologies there. And so you can see that as you pull this up, you'll see your collateral level. You'll see how much USDL you can pull out. You'll see how much the Pulse you can deposit. You'll have the repay function where you can actually sort of close that position. You'll see the fee, which is up front. And that fee also has a really neat structure there. One, it goes out to the stakers in the platform. The other is that fee is one of the things that helps keep this ecosystem healthy. So there's times that you don't want people to continue taking, say, more risky loans, right? And you'll see that fee raise, and then it will lower. So there's a lot of little things built in to help keep that equilibrium along with redemption in some of these things. So you have this very clear, you lay out. The collateral level is one that a lot of people will look at. Liquidation is a big one. Liquidation is also something that really needs to be discussed almost on its own. And I always like to almost use the term, I don't like people to worry, but I do want you to be concerned. I'm someone that always wants you to be hyper secure in what you're doing. So algorithmic stablecoin just means that it doesn't have centralized counterparty risk. It's not backed by fiat, right? There's an algorithm that makes sure
this particular stablecoin is backed by PLS, right? So the native coin of Pulsechain, which makes it really strong. It's one of the two things I think that make it a really strong stablecoin.
And so here's a few of those things. One is that the system always has more Pulse as far as value than it does USDL out. The other is, and some people have brought this up, so I'll try to touch on it briefly. Why is it just Pulse and not PulseX? There's a lot of reasons to be very, very diligent in what you choose can be used as collateral. One is if it has relatively small liquidity pools and its price can be very volatile. And this is, I'll try to be quick too. I always get on rambling. So this is a broad subject that is really cool that we see in the ecosystem in different ways. So with Hex, we like thin liquidity, right? Like we want volatility. We want people to be able to push the price up, right? We want to have that kind of price action. We've seen how positive that can be. So in some of those things, you want a thin liquidity pool because we want price up. We want big green candles, right? So in sort of a design choice there, that's what you'd want, right? But Hex, in this very limited circumstance, everybody put your pitchforks away, would work terrible as collateral for that exact same reason, right? Because we can move the price up and down in violent ways. So in a collateral, what you need is something that is very fungible, has a lot of, we kind of say escape routes, some of the terminology, that has a lot of pairing, it's very large, thick. These things make it a really good collateral choice. So that's one of those interesting things, again, about what do you want, right? So much of this stuff is relatively complicated. So, that's why there's one collateral choice, because one collateral choice allows you to be more capital efficient, make these things simpler on the back end, not have to do things like you'll see with like DAO control, which also introduced some attack surface. So using one collateral that is large and tight in most of these pools makes this a much safer overall system and requires less governance.
Yeah, and it's the native coin, so it makes it super strong. I like that. So you got two key things. You got the native coin backing the stable coin, and you got collateralization to make sure that it stays well collateralized. And I think that's brilliant. The other thing, of course, you can use your USDL right to buy any asset. You don't have to buy Pulse, more Pulse. You can buy Hex. You can buy Pulse X as well, which pumps the prices, right? So I think that's kind of the magic sauce here, is that people will be able to use these stable coins without selling the initial bag. It's kind of a lockup of your staking. You're basically staking your Pulse. You're locking it up, and then you can go out and do what you want with these stable coins. Pretty neat. Now,
and
you've also got...
There's a few things other than sort of the, what does this originally mean, right? There's a couple uses. One is, especially if people like listen to Andrew Henderson, he's one of the nomad capitalists. I'm a big fan of a lot of things he puts out. If you listen to a lot of entrepreneurs, people essentially, especially if they make large amounts of money and they make it in, hashtag unstable ways, crypto users, you can say let's take 2020, the big bull run, right? How much on paper did a lot of the people here in chat make, right? Okay. If you had treated your finances moving forward, like that was how much money you were going to make, 2022 was not very fun, right? You realize you ate in a lot to your principal. So one of the other mechanics about using some of these collateralization tools is to be conscious of how much of your wealth you're actually spending, how much of your income you're actually spending, and sort of understanding that, hey, I may not always be at this level. If this bull run isn't every single year. So I think there's some ways about being conscious on your funds. The other is people misunderstand liquidation and its risk. It's obviously very different than taking a highly leveraged like margin call position where being liquidated means you get wrecked to zero. So this is something I also plan to put out a lot of content on. And I will always want to be careful because being liquidated isn't good. And I want everyone to always be safe rather than unsafe, to be conservative rather than reckless, to not participate rather than participate in something they don't understand. But I do want to put it out there so there's some explanation. So if you look at the collateralization at a certain percentage, we can actually sort of show, okay, if Pulse does XYZ sort of movement, where's my risk, right? What has to happen to that price, not just to be liquidated, but to be liquidated and be at a loss? And at what time point does it have to be liquidated if what I'm using that USDL for has yielding or is price positive, right? So, just a really, really quick one is, let's say that I'm going to collateralize it at a percentage and I was going to take that 5 PLSX and use it in the staking pool. Okay. Again, just really simple math. Let's say that makes 20% APY. Okay. Then you can start to look at, as that APY is generated, we'll kind of assume that PulseX stays price neutral just for the example. You can see where that window of where the Pulse price could go, where you would be at a loss, gets smaller and smaller until you essentially are price positive, even if that spot liquidates. So it's really about using these tools and sort of wholeness, and there's a lot of mechanics, and that's why I always like to recommend that people really understand how they participate. I said the same things about providing liquidity inside of PulseX. I've said the same things about, even Hex to some degree, and understanding when you're staking, not to overcommit to, and then have to use EES and those things. So there's a lot to use these things constructively. And again, to defend everyone who, doesn't like the protocol, thinks it's too risky, wants to stick in RH things, that's fine as well. And I would much rather that they don't participate until they 100% understand and agree and know how to use them positively, or use the other things, whether it's stake USDL, stake loan, encourage people to use USDL for the liquidity.
Yeah.
There's a million reasons to take the stance you choose.
That's cool. So I think that's good. I think that's really important to get around risk management and things like that and education. I think that's really, really cool. I guess I'm just going to go through this briefly, but we've got, obviously you can borrow USDL and that's going to potentially have a big impact on people buying other assets like Pulse and PulseX and things. They can do what they want.
Which we want.
Yep. And of course, then of course you can earn returns in the stability pool by staking your USDL. That's an alternative to go and buy something else. You can just put it in there and get any liquidation gains and loan rewards, which is PLS and loan, which is pretty nice. And then finally, I guess you can also stake your loan token. And obviously, a lot of people that did the liquid loan sacrifice will getting loan tokens over a 2-year period. I think it's about 25% coming out straight away, and then it sort of just comes out on the emission curve over the next 2 years. And people can stake that and get PLS and USDL. Any further comments about just the product? I just want to make sure that the people knew what we're talking about in terms of liquid loans. So,
sure. So both of those are things that, again, if you get, say, 60, 70% of it, if you like the ideas of things we're going to, but that, again, that risk management you just don't feel 100% comfortable with, cool. These are great ways to interact, participate, be in the community, learn how to use the rest of these tools more constructively, and take some yield. The other is that with the loan token, as you brought up, like Terra and a few of these things earlier, it's not only important to make sure that you're getting yield, especially trustless yield, but then when you get it, you understand where it comes from, right? That yield's important. If you were in Celsius and you didn't understand where the yield come from, you didn't understand the risk. If you were in some of the Terra Luna ecosystem and you were getting the yield and you didn't understand the risk, there were downsides there, right? So there's great ways to interact, and using the loan, it comes from somewhere, right? Like there's a tool, there's a service being provided, and those fees are collected from there, and so you understand where that yield's coming from.
That's a terrific point, Walrus. I think that's a really good point, and people should know that for sure. Now, obviously, this is the state of liquid loans at the moment in terms of the DApp, which looks beautiful. I'm a big fan of what you guys have done on the team with this. Now, let's talk about what liquid loans might be like in the future post Pulsechain launch, because we've got a couple of questions in here that sort of allude to this. So let me just jump to this one here. Scott says, any possible timeline prediction for liquid loans debit card? CZ mentioned happening with liquidity would be amazing. So
I don't have any of the inside baseball on that just yet, but that is another one of the things that I would encourage a lot of people inside of the space is to try and stay in crypto, right? I've spoken about this, about some of the things I do myself, about actually traveling the world and certain things. That's the reason I really enjoy Andrew Henderson and Nomad Capitalist. Of course, it's nice to sort of have your, what would actually kind of function like a savings and investment account. It's another to be able to use things like USDL or whatever it is you prefer as a payment thing back and forth. So I've actually held some funds a few times to help people out as sort of an escrow as they buy things in crypto, like Hex watches and really cool stuff. I would encourage people to, here, that's why he's asking about the debit card. I think it's a cool idea. I would like to see what we can do to facilitate that in a way that stays on brand. There's some difficult things still dealing with Visa and some legacy institutions, but I encourage people to do more with crypto. Again, I'm all here for number go up. If they only want to stay inside of Archie's ecosystem, his choice, I 100% understand that as well. I would just encourage in whatever way people feel comfortable to interact more with crypto if they can. Okay,
great. Now, people have talked about PulseX earlier. So we've talked about credit cards. PulseX is, are you guys maybe doing another protocol? PulseX is the token, or is that a bit like Hex? It's too much potential volatility, even though it has a buy and burn function.
So PulseX is awesome. The primary connection between the two early on will be in trying to encourage USDL as a liquidity pair. That's something we would like to see get paid out with the INC reward as well. So again, encourage the ecosystem to do that. There is no sort of current plans for another collateral choice at this point. Jesse's awesome. Sweet. Everyone loves Jesse, me included.
Sorry. Yeah.
The other is what I think that you would see if people are sort of interested in like what would be next for us, although we haven't even, we got to get the chain live and do a lot of cool stuff first. I think what you would see as far as growth is that it would be closer along the lines of the growth you've seen in like Uniswap. So the code's immutable. It doesn't have admin keys. We can't go in there and start playing with things. But what we can do is sort of see some of the progress like you've seen with Uniswap. That would allow different collateral choices, different mechanics to be launched in a different way. And then you allow everyone to use as they choose, right? So you don't want to go in and add collateral and sort of start mucking around, and not that we could in the first place, but just the theory behind it, right? You want limited governance. You don't want admin keys. You want it to be set it and forget and used as you will. And then with renovations in the future, you want to make sure that you use more of a Uniswap growth model than, sort of anything to change, because one, we can't, and also not what you'd want to do even if we could. So you'll see things like V2, V3, where there's maybe changes, maybe additions to collateral, additional features. Those are things you might see in there, and then people could still always choose to use what they want. The other is that there's a bit of balancing on adding features for two reasons. One is you want it to be vanilla. Vanilla has very little attack surface. You don't want things that can break. I did a little joke about that on Twitter. They can check it out if they want. It's kind of funny. It takes a little what to say, but you want the smallest attack surface possible. So you want the code and the base to be perfect with no attack surface. And so that means every feature is more code. More code is more problems. There's no way around it. No matter how perfect everything is, more code is more attack surface. The other is a bit in scaling and growth models is something that I think we've seen in Hex is that Hex hasn't broken, right? That's a very good thing. What you've seen is things like HSI, things like Maxi, people build cool stuff on top. Would those things have been as cool at launch? Imagine how much we've had to learn and derive as we've gone on. Imagine if, again, some people still don't get Hex right. So imagine if the beginning you had to explain Hex, T-shares, tradable stakes, encapsulation, then the derivative, Pulse, it's too much, right? So you almost start with something that understand, can use and grow with, that has very little attack surface, that's perfect. And then you have more data points, you have more community engagement to add features in other ways on top through either a Uniswap model or through third parties building really cool things. So it's kind of interesting in some ways that you want less features in crypto in some context, because you want other people to be really, really engaged and likely to build on top. So, Gold Key and I can't remember what Dipcatcher's real name is, right? Those guys and Alex, they have their own rhyme and reason, and they brought new utility to the space. They brought, a slightly different audience as well. So, if XYZ feature is something that a lot of people want, not only do we want someone to be able to come in and add that for those people, but maybe that person just has a different rhyme, reason, audience, vibe, and connects with people different than myself or the rest of the team. And we want them to bring people in. So you sort of leave meat on the bone for other creators to come in, expand, grow, scale, and then also to make sure that the base layer is vanilla, polished, no attack surface.
Now, Wall's got a question here. What happened to the other forks that LL is based on? So he's probably saying, how do they perform? How do you think liquid loans perform? What's the kind of the difference? What will be the difference that will make liquid loan, I guess, do particularly well, something like that?
Sure. I would say the USDL, LUSD, all the stable coins have done tremendously well. They've had very tight ranges, always performed, never broken, all those types of things. I don't think wall to wall is especially a big fan of some of the stuff we built. So I'm assuming what he would like acknowledge is like the price performance on their tokens. And it has not been strong on most of them. I think Petty Cash and Liquidity, their derivation of the loan token has not performed especially priced well. Part of that is those, again, to be fair on criticism, they haven't done a great job marketing and feeling especially integrated with the rest of the community the way that myself and LL hope to continue to be and grow those connections.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
So I think some of that has to do with just their presentation and marketing. They didn't even really have an official front end for a long time. They built certain things. So, and Richard, I always mispronounce his name, Lauka, he's a brilliant man, absolutely brilliant. So I want those criticisms to be outspoken so that people can see what we would do different, but not to be so negative about what they have built. The other is there's a lot more competition directly for stable coins and some of these other utilities with centralized utilities that people thought worked for a long time. So, Celsius, well, that didn't really go that well. Terra Luna. So I think that we've seen other competition that people would have said was superior fail. And now that you'll start to see that natural concentration back into things that are limited governance and perform better. The other is things like Make or Die that had a long tenured relationship with a lot of these things. And, that'll be something that we'll spend more time with, because again, I think the Die's worked wonderfully. It's been great. I think it goes to show that there is a lot of stability when done correctly in algorithmic stable coins along with LUSD, but that there's capital efficiency, that there's risk in DAOs, and there's other advantages to using liquidity there and liquid loans on Pulsechain. So that's a very fair question, I think. I think primarily what he's saying is their coin has not performed well.
Two key takeaways for me out of what you kind of said is that you're looking to scale the customer involvement and the amount of customers, particularly people using the DApp. And number two is you're going to be in early, which is, I think, a pivotal time in terms of the growth. It's always, Richard Hart always says, get in early. I think you guys are got protocol growing early, and that gives you a sense of big place amongst the DeFi places. DeFi spots there. Is that fair call?
Mm-hmm. I would also tease Wall just a little bit. I'm assuming he's an RH maximalist. And again, I have no problem with that. I wonder how all the forks and copies of Hex have performed. Terribly, because they didn't have RH and they didn't have the community. I would use that a bit in for ourselves as well. Those guys are very intelligent. They weren't as involved in the community. They didn't have community members participating at the level they do. Myself, the admin, CC, Dave, Jesse, HexyCat, so on and so forth, that have been here literally before the chain launch and done the things we've done. So I think in some ways you can see what we're doing is similar to Hex, in that none of the copies, none of the clones, none of the workarounds ever performed the way Hex did. And I think some of that magic you'll see with liquid loans.
Now, this one here is around competition again, regarding liquidity supporting the protocol and Pulsechain. In other words, competition. So you welcome competition. You said that earlier about stablecoins. So I don't imagine you're much different. There's another stablecoin really, and another DApp there. So
yeah, it'd be a very similar answer. I would appreciate the competition. Those guys are intelligent. I would love to have more smart people, not less, into the space. And if they want to come in and compete, I think it would be a fantastic thing. I don't think they're likely to. Richard is a very, very slow to change, which there's no negatives with that. There's a lot of reasons to maintain that. And then again, I think when they see our integration into the ecosystem and the tool being out there, I don't really think they would like to. There's probably other chains where they would have more engagement, more likely to have success.
Cool. Now, we talked about debit card and possibly PulseX DApp. Now, you guys doing mobile? Because obviously that's where a lot of people use mobile these days. Are you guys doing mobile DApp, or have you guys got that already? I'm not sure.
There'll be some changes and things to make it accessible. I always, like Papa B and like most of the people, prefer not to use mobile when at all possible. There are things that can make it safer. Gnosis, Staker app, some Graphene OS. There's multiple ways to sort of do things in a more tangible way that make mobile more secure.
Yeah.
Especially if I was doing something like LL.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So something, I know we're coming up on time. Something just quickly, I like to bring up security. I always like to be of service. Education security comes first. So I've said before that I like to treat money and security similar in crypto as I would in real life, right? So if I owed Superman $5, he'd probably just let me have him a $5 bill, right? If I owed him 50, he'd probably, maybe he doesn't want to carry $50. Maybe I don't have $50. He'd probably use Zelle, Cash App, something along these lines, right? If it was 500, maybe we go a different route. 5,000, okay, he's probably, maybe he wants a certified check or a bank transfer or something a little more secure without a fee. If I owe Superman 5 million, I promise you he does not want me to walk up like Pablo Escobar and hand him a briefcase full of money, right? This to me is the exact same thing in crypto. If you have, $40 and you want to mint an NFT, or you're doing XYZ thing, or playing with something that, takes a lot of microtransactions, right? Okay, and you're never going to have that much value. You're going to transfer it off. You can use a naked per se account on your phone. Yeah. If you are going to be staking Hex for 15 years, do not do that. That's a very different commitment. You're married to that seed. You need to do that in the most secure way possible. That's ledgers, Trezors, whatever hardware device, dedicated computers if you're, going up more, 24-word seed words if you're going to go up more, a lot of things there, right? So, you want to make sure that you're using a proper level of security for whatever kind of funds it is, right? So the same way that again, imagine if you were locking up $1 million worth of gold. Like, would you just walk into, your bank and just set it on the counter, shove it to the teller and say, bye, give me a receipt? Absolutely not. You take the level of security that makes sense for those funds. So something like LL isn't something that you would need to sort of do off the cuff on a Saturday. So in some ways, I've thought of my own security as not only do they secure me from the outside, but they're usually counterative to convenience. And I really don't think LL is something you'd want to use in a convenient way. You would want to be making sure that you're making very sound decisions and taking care of it. So we'll always try to add more utility, but I would always recommend, again, to something like this is something that's going to be attached to a lot of value. You want to be interacting with that in a very secure way.
Yeah, fabulous. Hey, look, we're up to our hour that we talked about, and I just want to say a big congratulations to you on your new role. I think it's fantastic. And man, I'd love to have you on again. I got a whole other topic I'd love to talk to you about in the future when you're ready. And just thanks so much for coming on, dropping all the alpha on us. It's so good. So
yeah, thanks so much for all the chat. I love interactions. You guys know I don't like to just stand on my soapbox and ramble. That's what I said on Twitter. Pros, cons, positive, negative. Thanks so much for coming and asking, giving me an opportunity to answer them in any way. Superman, thanks again, brother, for the invitation, and community. I love you guys. Thanks so much.
Now, where can people contact you to ask you if they've got extra questions to ask you more?
So one, if you can't find me, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing well enough, but it's Twitter. It's at Walrus HTP, like how to pulse. You can find me on Telegram. Always be safe. It's Walrus with 2 L's, like you see there. And also, again, there's a lot of those. You can always go into the Liquid Loans chat, Pulsechain, Pulsex, any of these big projects, and just, ask an admin to tag me. All those, I try to interact with a lot of those guys there. So Telegram's somewhere to always be extra careful on. Again, I'll try to add my direct email shortly onto the Liquid Loan site. Streamers can always get a hold of me. Again, if you can't get a hold of me, then I'm making mistakes. So anywhere, come find me, tweet me on DM. I'll always try to answer your questions as fast as I can.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much, Walrus. Looks like everyone in the chat is super stoked about the interview, and really do appreciate it. Hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and hope you guys don't forget to subscribe, like, share, hit the bell. I will leave Walrus's Twitter in the video description after the live stream, so you guys can check it out, and of course catch up with them if you've got any further questions. I know that many of you are loving Liquid Loans, and we're looking forward to it launching on Pulsechain. So awesome. All the best with your job, Walrus, and we'll hopefully get to talk to you again soon. And take care, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Bye for now.